Hey, it's Wednesday at 5 o'clock. You know what that means. It's time for Russ Hour on PROPELIO TV. Guys, thanks for tuning in. We got a great show lined up for you today. And we're going to be talking about flipping, not really flipping, I guess transitioning is a great word, transitioning single family residents into a senior care facility. So I got a great guest with me today, and her name is Lori Janacek. I always screw that one up. I don't know why, but if you know me very well, you know I screw up all kinds of names, but that's okay. We're going to get into this thing here pretty quick, and then we'll talk about what you do, how you do it, and let's start out by just introducing yourself. Tell us who you are and how you wound up here.
Well, I'm excited to be here. This is like the coolest thing I've ever done. My name is Lori Janacek. I'm a registered nurse and a certified forensic nurse, and I specialize in Alzheimer's and dementia. And I have been working at assisted living facilities for over 10 years now. So it is a great business. It's a great way for seniors to live. And there's a really cool new trend about taking like 1980, 90 homes and flipping them into residential care homes. It's really cool.
Oh, very cool. So you've got a book that you wrote. Let me just, and there's my phone going off, of course. I just put this up here for the camera for everybody to see, but a little hard to see, I think. But tell us a little bit about this book. What's this book all about?
It is for people, like the other day I talked to a family, they went to the doctor, they thought that, she thought her husband had anxiety and depression because he stopped playing golf. He'd been playing golf forever, and got in there and the doctor said, you have Alzheimer's. And if a piano had fallen through the ceiling, they would have been less shocked. So he said, here's a prescription for Aricept, and you know, here's a website to go to. And they got out to the parking lot and they couldn't breathe. They couldn't even drive off the parking lot because they knew their lives would never be the same. Right. So this book is a way to be prepared once you're diagnosed, what you need to do. Like for example, a lot of people don't realize that if silver alert's issued, you have to have a prescription from a doctor that says you have Alzheimer's, like Henry Miller's name, and the doctor's prescription before a silver alert can be issued. Like, so on our smartphones we see amber alerts a lot, but we don't see a lot of silver alerts because the criteria is so strict. And yet 6 out of 10 will wander away at some point during the disease process, and if they're not found within 24 hours, the results are catastrophic. Wow. So this is what this book does. It takes these families, this is what you need to do, and this is how you prepare. Okay, very good, very good. Yeah.
So when we're talking about the real estate side of this and the need, let's talk a little bit about the need and what the industry is doing and how these 1980 homes are being transferred into the senior care facilities.
Well, you know, we have a type A and you have a type B. You have a small facility and a large facility. So I think that's very important to understand. So if you're a small facility, you're 16 residents or 16 patients or 16 people living in that home and less. Okay. If you're large, you're 17 and more. So today, for today's purposes, we're going to be talking about a small. Right. Now the other very important thing for developers and investors and real estate agents and brokers, everyone to understand, you have a type A and a type B. If you are a type A, that patient, that resident, that person has got to be able to evacuate out of that house by themselves without assistance in under 13 minutes. Type B, they would require assistance. So I have people all the time going in and saying, you know, oh, well, I don't have to put a sprinkler system there. I'm going to do a type A. I'm going to do, you know, and you know, whoa, 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 because you can't charge for someone that has like Alzheimer's or dementia that would pay a lot more if you're a type A. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm explaining that right. Right. You know? So type A is a little more mobility. Yes. And they're able to get up and walk out if they hear the fire alarm. If they have to. Okay. So then the type B, obviously, they're going to need some assistance to get out of the facility, which the requirements are going to change at that point. Exactly, because obviously they need a higher level of care. So we can charge more, you know, frankly. So where do investors go to look up the requirements for the type of facility that they want to
put together?
You're going to go. It's Department of Aging. It's Dad's, and it's called the Life and Safety Code. And
Life
that's
and
what
Safety
it is.
Code,
That's
Dad's,
what it is.
and Dad stands for the Department of Aging.
Of Aging Disabilities.
Aging Disabilities.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
And I would very, very much recommend. There's a lot of people out there that specialize in this, and helping people, making sure you understand. And you know, a lot of us, we're just in the business. We can help, but I go and help consult with people before, and they'll look at this house and say, oh my gosh, this is great. But just one example is, if there's an upstairs, that is completely wasted space in this incident, you know, in this, you know, because there's never going to be a time that a resident can go upstairs, not only mobility, but the fire safety issue, you know. So if it's an upstairs, other than maybe your staff living there or something, that's completely wasted space. So, you know, those are the type of things that, you know, I always recommend. You know, yes, look at the safety code. Yes, maybe hire somebody that, you know, knows the ins and outs of the rooms and the specs of the rooms, and, you know, an architect, you know, things like that. But also talk to somebody who, you know, is in the business.
Right.
Yeah.
So what kind of property should investors look for to do this with? I mean, we know that we're looking at 1980s and newer.
Or 90s.
90s, 1980s, 90s, 2000 homes. So what kind of floor plans or configurations? Now we know we don't want two-story, but number of bedrooms, baths, what kind of kitchen needs to go in? I mean, what do we got to do as investors to get this house ready after we purchase it to move these residents in?
Yeah, that's a great question. The most successful ones I have seen, and this is just from my experience, are, I think you call it a ranch style, but at those sprawling 1980 homes, you know, where the showers are like trimmed in gold, and, you know, the tub, you know, always, you know, I think that's like the late 80s.
Brass.
Yes, exactly, early 90s. And the homes that I've seen the most success in has been in those type of homes, because it's very easy, you know, to make the bathrooms disability, you know, I think it's ADA requirements, and we can talk about that in just a second. I think it's very important to understand that what Dad says and what Life Safety Code says is that each resident, each one of your people in this house, if they're a single person in the room, they have to have 100 square feet.
Okay.
If you're putting 2 people in that room or more, each one requires 80 square feet.
Okay.
So you can probably put that in better perspective than I can.
So just do the math to see if that room has at least 100 square feet. So we're talking 10 by 10.
Yeah, see, I don't know that.
10 by 10 is 100, you know, 10 times 10 is 100 square feet. So
there you go.
That's a relatively small bedroom.
It is.
Actually, but what's good about that is that there was a lot of houses that were built where we had, you know, decent sized masters, but then the kids' rooms, the other 2 rooms in a house, or 3 or 4 rooms in a house were, you know, 10 by 10, 11 by 10, something to that effect. So relatively small rooms.
Yes. Yes.
So my question then is that when investors start looking for these houses, we've got to buy these houses that we can convert over. Is there anything particular we have to do with the kitchen to make them comply?
Not if it's small. That's a great question. If it's a small, which this is what we're talking about, they can use a residential kitchen. They do not, there's no commercial kitchen requirements, okay? I have people ask me about this all the time, because if you look in the state regs, kind of back to our bathroom, bedroom, kitchen, all of that, it says that you only need one. They use the word water closet and lavatory, so a toilet and a sink per.
We call them half baths.
Yeah, exactly, right, exactly. You know, for each 6 residents. And so, you know, as an investor, you know, or developer, you're like, woohoo, because this house has 4, you know. And then also it says you only need 1 tub and shower per 10 occupants. Right. Once again, you go as a developer, woohoo, you know, this has 4. But let's all be honest, you know, because I am not putting my daddy anywhere.
The question is what sells, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, you can do it, but then it comes back to, can you put anybody in there? Will anybody put their family member in there? And if they do, at what price will they put them in there at?
100%.
So what exactly is the typical scenario? What do these families that are looking for a place for mom or a place for dad look for?
Well, usually they're going to go in wanting a private room. That's the number one thing they're going to say. But I have to tell you, you know, most of our mom and dads, you know, they have been with somebody for 50 and 60 years. Mm-hmm. And so especially if they have Alzheimer's or dementia, I think if they're at the same level of the disease, that they actually do very well with somebody in the room with them. Now that takes a lot of convincing on my part with families, and I have to say, look, I've been doing this a long time. Like, it really does work. So I think developers need to have somebody kind of sell that, and I believe in it though, as long as they're at the same level, right? You can't have somebody that maybe is, you know, chair bound or requires feeding in with someone who's still walking. That would not be feasible. But if they're both wheelchair bound, and they both require a two-person assist, they would be very appropriate together. So you can put 2 people in a room in that scenario, and then that gets back to your square footage. So they each need 80, right? 80 square feet apiece. Then, if they're wheelchair bound, they have to have 3 feet of clearance. If there's a dresser, if there is a bed, anything, that wheelchair needs a full 3 feet of clearance. So you probably better, you know, but you know, your master bedroom for certain can put 2 people in the master bedroom. And then that's when you can appeal to people that they can't afford, let's say, $4,500, $4,700, $5,000 a month. They just can't. You know, their dad brings home, you know, Social Security's $1,200, his retirement's $2,000. So they're in the, you know, the threes, you know, maybe high threes. Well, that's a perfect scenario to put 2 people in that room, you know. But the number one thing they're going to say is, I want a private room. Right. That's the number one thing. So you have to, you know, so in a residential home, you have to be prepared to sell that. And then, but also you're going to offer less if there's 2 in that room. Right. Does that make sense?
So, private room, what about bathrooms?
Well, that's, you know, honestly, if it is a private room with a private bath, you're going to go between probably $5,000 and $6,000 a month. If they're sharing, you're going to go down. So those are the type of things that you have got to take into consideration when you're looking at these homes. How many baths? And I guess you call them en suites, right, where the bath is attached. And, you know, and if there is like 3 bedrooms and they're all sharing a bath, okay, those are 6 people. Are they all male, all female? You know, you've got, that's where your sales and your real estate, you know, agents, and as you're looking, you've got to consider those things. Because if it's like, at this end of the room, it's 1 bath and 3 bedrooms, and like, woohoo, I can put 2 people in each, and state regs say that 6 can share, yeah, we'll try to sell it.
Try to sell it. Absolutely. So when we're, what kind of people, how does an investor go out and they buy this house and they bring it in, they get it all set up, and then they start to sell it? What kind of staffing is required?
Yeah, it's a great question. In the state of Texas, a registered nurse or a LVN does not have to be at that facility. And that's extremely important to understand. However, when they are giving medications to those residents, and they will be, that's part of the service, and we'll need to kind of go over that in just a second, a registered nurse has to delegate that duty. Right. So you're going to have to pay an RN somewhere to kind of delegate. And what usually works extremely well in these situations is to, you know, hire a nurse that comes in, let's say on Friday, and she, you know, does just a quick assessment. She does all the nursing notes at that time, like once a week, you know, we do notes. And then she, like, let's say she pre-fills the med boxes, and then she trusts the people under her license to appropriately give those patients, dispense those meds every day. So, but you don't have to have somebody, you don't have to have a nursing staff there.
So are there RNs out there that are in that business?
Call me.
That's what they do. There you go. Hey, call her.
It's easy money. It's easy, fun money, to be honest with you. It really is, you know. And all of your staff, they do not, in the state of Texas, I can't speak for other states, but in the state of Texas, they do not have to be certified nursing assistants. And some of the best girls that have worked with me for 10 years have been 0 experience, and they trained under me. And I've got to be frank, you're probably going to get a bunch of comments on there when I say this, but if I have somebody coming...
We like comments. Y'all comment away. All the comments you care to make.
They're going to go, where?
Ask all the questions you care to ask too, because we'll answer them all.
Like, you know, if you're in a nursing home and you are a caregiver and you're a nursing aide in a nursing home, that is one type of facility. But an assisted living is completely different. And for me, it's really hard to take someone who's done nursing home and bring it into the assisted living. And that is a fact. I would really rather take somebody with no experience and train them. You know, and that's part of the criteria when you have an assisted living. You've got to have the training material. But I'd a lot rather do that, to tell you the truth. I mean, for me over the years, it's been a lot more successful. But I think it's great for a developer or someone that's investing in this to understand you're not going to have to look for certified nursing aides. You're not going to have to look for RNs. You know, you just have to look for a loving, caring staff.
Yeah, I mean, and that was what was important with me. You know, when my mother was alive and she was in a facility, and you know, the care that the caregivers gave her was more important. I have no idea what their requirements were, what their licenses were. If they were licensed, I didn't care about any of that. What I really want to know is did they care about my mother?
Absolutely.
And there was actually no question whatsoever in the facility that she was in, and down in Marble Falls, and I don't know the name of it, but it was phenomenal. But they cared about her. They took care of her.
And it's everything. And I honestly think that, you know, when you're looking, you know, at a home, you're looking at doing this. I mean, you know, I think real estate agents know this. You always, you know, you're going to try to sell a home, and usually the people when they walk in know it. You know, they get a feeling. And it's the same way with this. You walk in and you'll know it. You'll know it.
Hey, you know, the funny thing, you probably get a snicker out of this, but, you know, we would buy my mother, you know, clothes to wear around, and then we'd go down there, and you know, the lady that's sitting over there would be wearing something that belonged to my mother, and because they'd go get washed, and then it was kind of potluck how it got back, and you know, some of the supplies that we bought her had a tendency to walk away, and you know, things that are sitting around, you know, you would, the residents would just kind of walk in, pick up. It's just part of it. And I would think in these single family residents that are flipped over, they're smaller, so it would be a lot easier to kind of keep up with that. My mother was not in a small facility. She was in a large one that had an entire wing for you know, the memory care folks, and that's where she was. But and she was there for, you know, quite a long time, a lot longer than I guess most people. But
yeah, and I think the other thing that's you've got to take in consideration when you're looking at these homes, and like, you know, number one, we talk about the life safety codes, is the sprinkler system, because like I said, if you're B, then you know, every habitable space, am I saying that right? And closets have got to be sprinkled.
Okay.
In type A, that's not
so
the
B
case.
Is where they need help getting out.
That's right.
So
that's right.
But of course, in that situation, you're going to be able to get more money.
Absolutely.
The level of care is going to have to go up.
100%.
What about in the B type, or you're going to have to hire different people, or is that going to require licensed folks to come in?
Nope, not at all.
So the same people. So you could take the same residents and then up the scale as you go, or
you know,
how does that normally work?
Well, to me, if I'm going to go into that home, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get it life code, you know, up to safety for type B.
Okay.
You know, why do it B, and then you've got to wait for dads to come out and inspect, and then the first person that comes, you know, that could pay you very well, guess what? You can't take them because they don't meet that criteria, and then you've got to go back in, and then you're going to have to sprinkle it, right? So, you know, I just think it's so important to understand the difference between type A and type B, and even if you look at the standards for A and the standards for A are like this, and your standards for B are like this, go ahead, you know, as an investor and as a developer, go ahead and get it sprinkled and get it ready for type B. I mean, it's just a much better idea. I've
got a question, and I'm not sure you can answer, but if you can, that'd be great. But it's really a question for the viewers. Has anybody put a sprinkler system in a home like this? And if so, how much did it cost? What does it cost to put a sprinkler system in a 4-bedroom, you know, 3-bath house?
Plus closets.
Plus closets.
Has to be closets too.
So yeah, in the closets too. So basically, all the air-conditioned space needs a sprinkler system.
And I guess it's the riser that's so important at that point, and having, you know, the fire marshal come out and all of that.
And get it certified and checked.
That's actually a great question.
Someone, if you got any experience with that, please let us know on the Facebook feed or the YouTube feed. or both. If you could, if you really got some experience with that, it'd be really cool if you jump into both of them and just drop us a number.
And also, if there's somebody out there that knows, because the other thing that's important is to put a keypad, like an entry keypad where you have to punch in a code to get in and out.
Get in and out.
So that you can take your Alzheimer's, dementia, you know, type patients or residents. I mean, you know, I hate to, you know, talk about money, but frankly, those are your high payers.
Right.
And, you know, that's where families want to put their loved ones with Alzheimer's and dementia. You know, you had a wonderful experience. I worked in a facility that, you know, was wonderful. And I you know, had 20 to 23 people. You know, now I'm in a place on 13 acres in the middle of the country that has 13. But there's lots and lots of families that feel more comfortable putting your loved ones in a home like this, you know, and so you're going to have to do the keypad entry. I guess that's the name. So you're going to punch in a code, but also not just to get in, but to get out, and that would have to be at each exit. So that's another cost you have to consider. And number 3 is if you ever walk in and you smell anything, they will walk back out. I mean, that is a fact.
Yeah, if you,
that is a fact. So you have to put in flooring, and I think this is probably cheaper, but just the flooring I would recommend is the type that you roll. You know, maybe it has a wood look, but you roll it.
Like the vinyl planks.
Yes, sir. Yes. Because if you put like the squares or any of that, because they're incontinent, they just are.
Yeah.
And it's going to permeate through, you know, I don't care how you seal it, it's going to permeate through that. So it's so much better to have the rolled, like wood look type, you know, vinyl or whatever. But I would put that throughout the whole house. You know, of course, in the shower would be, you know, and rather waterproof. But
good thing about that flooring too is the wheelchairs roll on it really easy. And, and they're very durable. They'll handle.
Exactly.
You know, chairs being moved around on them.
Exactly.
I put them in rental properties, so.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly. So that's really your 3 costs.
I use a really heavy, it's really durable product.
But you roll it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I, for the life of me, can't think of the name brand that I use. I do know that the one that I used in the last 2 that I did, I really liked, and it's not available anymore.
Oh.
But there's other products out there that are.
From what I understand, it's probably less expensive.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely. It's a relatively cheap floor. You buy a bunch of extras to keep because you can pop those suckers up. They're usually, you know, we're talking about a 3x6, 3 foot by 6 inch plank that you can just pop one up and glue another one down if you've got one that's messed up and in a area that you really need to look nice. So,
Yeah, and I mean, so that's important. You know, I've talked to other people that are putting one in, and maybe they got a consult about, you know, this type of flooring is better for their perception, and you know, and all this, and that's fine. You know, we can have those discussions all day long. But the fact is, they're going to be incontinent. It better be a floor that you can very easily clean up immediately. And the other thing is, and this is just a suggestion, but you know, if you could somehow put in 2 washing machines, that is so important, because as they're incontinent, you've got the laundry going. Incontinent, you've got the laundry going, and that's all day and all day, because your number 1 concern will be smell. Yeah. Number 1.
If you've ever been into one of the large facilities, you don't go too far into there before you figure out what she's talking about, because they all smell.
Yes, they do. But you can't have it in a residential home.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, and that's the one thing about the facility that my mother was in is it didn't smell either.
Yeah, mine doesn't either where I work, but we also do laundry every day. We do it. I mean, everybody's laundry is done every day.
Right.
Every time there's an incontinence, we immediately do it. So, and the reason why I'm saying that is that as a developer, if you're looking at this, you know, you need to look, hey, can I put either commercial type washing machine in, or what I highly recommend is just, you know, regular washing machines, but if you can put in 2. Yeah, to where it's just going all the time. You know, so that's something to very much consider is that laundry room.
Yeah, just those super high capacity.
There you go. There you go.
Because the cool thing about those is a lot of those will stack too. So you can put a washer and dryer, put them side by side, and just plumb in the extra. When you're setting it up. That way, literally in the same washer dryer closet, you can put 2 sets side by side, because you know they're designed to put a washer here and a dryer here, so it really wouldn't be hard to do that.
No, it's a great idea. It's a great. I never thought about that.
Well,
I'm going to steal that.
In our house, we've got the front loaders that we got stacked, the dryers on top, the washers on the bottom, because basically where the dryer was supposed to go, we put a clothes rack there.
Right.
So we pull things right out and set it right there, and it works great for us.
Right.
But it could very well be that we set up
a
whole nother set right beside it.
And that's a huge selling point.
Oh,
a huge selling point. And the other expense is, you know, they're going to need to get out and walk. They just are. You know, they're walking all the time. They're going all the time, especially with Alzheimer's and dementia. They're walking. And if they're in the wheelchair, they're propelling. So you're going to have some sort of like wrought iron fence or something in the back. You're going to have an area for them, you know, to, you know, either propel or get out. And it's in the life safety code, and it tells you exactly what it needs to be. But I think everybody in the business kind of goes above that. You know, but when you're looking at what you need to do, like I think if it's a wooden fence, you've got to be careful with that because, you know, they can't get out of it, or, you know, if there's a fire, it has to release the gate, you know, things like that. But your fencing is very important in your life safety code because it's important to their well-being.
Right.
Very important to their well-being.
They've got to be able to get out in the backyard. And
yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good. So we got a question from my loving wife. What about putting an elevator in the houses?
I actually have somebody that just wants me to actually go look at a house that's out in the country, and they had built it for her elderly mother, and it has an elevator in there. You know, my first question is life safety code fire. Life safety code fire. Like, what would that be? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much it would cost. I do not. But like I said, I'm going to go out next week and look because she lived in, you know, she was able to go upstairs and utilize that space through an elevator. You know.
Yeah, because I'm sitting there thinking about. Of the facilities, and of course I don't have a tremendous amount of experience. I mean, we obviously have some because my wife's grandmother went through a few rehab centers, and then she was residents in a couple of different places, and then you know,
like
finally
rehabs and stuff too, probably
was able to come home, and there she stayed there until the end. But I can't remember ever seeing a two-story.
Yeah, like I said, I'm looking at one next week, and like I said, my first question.
I'm talking about the traditional, you know, the large, complex, large.
Yeah. Well, your wife had a great question, you know, and I think it's more and more common. I don't know how much they would cost, but like I said, my first question would always, I mean, my first concern would be life safety code because of the fire issues, you know.
So she's also asking, is a sprinkler system on the inside
of the house?
Yes. So
on a type B.
Type B.
It has to be.
Again, type B is where they can't get up and walk out on their own. They need assistance to get out of the house in case of an emergency.
They cannot evacuate by themselves within 13 minutes.
Right. And so if you think about it, Kim, it's like wherever there's a room behind a door that's air conditioned. So all your closets going to have a sprinkler system.
Yes.
And all the rooms are going to have sprinkler systems. So anything that is partitioned off with that can be closed up is going to have a sprinkler system.
Habitable spaces, which I still guess that word.
Habitable spaces.
Spaces with closets is what they say. And also, I think it's probably a good time to talk about. I have people ask me about offices because a lot of those homes have the built-in offices, and but you cannot put a patient or resident into a room that does not have a window going to the outside.
Say that again?
So you, like, let's say there's an office.
Okay.
And they don't have a window because it's where the computer goes and all that. Well, you have a developer going in saying, well, here's an extra space.
Right.
Perfect. You cannot use that space if there's not a window because of fire safety.
Okay.
Dads will not allow it.
So, yeah,
I have developers all the time talk about that. They'll be, oh, well, yeah, we could put somebody right here, and hey, the bathroom's right here, perfect, you know. But if there's not, you know, so you talk about expenses. If the walls to the outside, you can put a window in, but there has to be a window and to the outside. So it can't be like, oh, here's a window, but it goes to the garage.
Very good.
That won't work.
Right. Okay. So, guys, we're right up against break time, so we're going to step away real quick. Thanks again for watching. If you got questions or comments, please drop them in the comment box, and we'll get to your questions if we can. And we'll be right back. And we're back. Russ Keith here. We're talking transferring single-family residents into assisted living facilities. So if you missed the first segment of this show, be sure and catch it on replay. And Lori, we'll just get back into this thing. So, man, you're such a wealth of information. It's you know, I've thought about this, and I've actually been approached about this subject before, but honestly, I didn't know that much about it, and I knew there's probably a place out there to go find the regs, and so now we know that we can look up the DAD's codes and see exactly what we need to do, but.
I think we need to talk about, because I think you had somebody on your video when you were driving in, saying that they didn't understand what assisted living was. Oh, okay. Let's get into that. I do think we need to talk about that, because I have people all the time. What is assisted living, or what is skilled? Or I have a doctor saying, oh well, this patient is wheelchair bound, so they can't go to an assisted living. And as a developer and as a real estate and as an investor, you've got to understand the difference, because a lot of people think assisted living means that Betty White, with a pina colada on a cruise ship, that's what qualifies for assisted living. But that would be type A, correct? That would be A, because they can evacuate on their own. We're talking about B. And so they can be absolutely wheelchair bound, like for example, after a stroke. And it requires 2 girls to transfer them to the potty, and 2 girls to transfer them to the chair, and 2 girls to transfer them to the bed. They can absolutely do that as long as they can sit up in that chair 4 to 6 hours a day. The big difference between assisted living, where our regs are like this, and a skilled, what we call skilled in our lingo, or nurses say skilled, and you would say nursing home. And their regs are like that. But the big difference is that we can't have a skill in there. So for example, if they have a feeding tube, they cannot be in an assisted living, because to monitor that feeding tube is a skill, right? That takes an RN. And remember, you don't, or an LVN, and you don't have to have that in an assisted living. So you can't have a skill. You cannot have a permanent catheter. Now you'll have some people, you may have some people, say, that's not true, we've had it before. But when state comes in, it gets really tricky, because your nursing aides can empty the bag, but they can in no way mess with that catheter or change the catheter or anything, because that is a skill. Right? And so you can't have that. And the third one, and the question I get all the time, is about insulin-dependent diabetics. Because so many times they're the ones that need assisted living. They can't. The families just can't handle it at home anymore. And I'm going to try not to get too nursey here, but if they're like on a insulin and it's the same dosage every time, then an RN can go in and delegate that. And she can say, here are the sites, and here's the teaching, here's the diabetic teaching. But they're drawing up, or usually the nurse will draw them up for a week. They'll go in. Remember, she comes in that Friday. She can go and draw them all up. But what state gets really funny about is what we call the sliding scale. So it would be, I've trained the nursing aide to check the blood sugar, and the result is 333, so we're going to give this much insulin. That takes a nurse. That's a skill, looking at that order to do it, and you'll have state. So
if they're on maintenance, one thing, but if they're
perfect way to word it.
Fluctuating.
Perfect way to word it. Perfect way to word it.
I was, in the school business forever, and I had kids that were, diabetic, and then I had, some that were constantly checking their blood pressure, because they were constantly having to adjust their
blood sugars all day.
Sugar levels, and they got really good at that. Well, obviously, when you get up in age and you start losing some of your faculties, it becomes a little bit difficult to do. So that particular individual is probably not going to be a candidate for what we're talking about today.
And I know some people that that on the residential side, that have these, and because there's really not like a Lori Janacek there all day, that type of thing. They don't take diabetics, insulin-dependent diabetics at all. I'm just letting you know. And now that's up to each person, but I think that's something you really have to consider. They just don't want the liability. They do not want their caregivers giving injections and being responsible for it. So your insulin-dependent diabetics is a biggie. Permanent catheters is a biggie. Feeding tubes is a biggie, because those are a skill.
We got a question or comment. Jeremiah, he's got some good points here, in a great question that came up. He's talking about ADA requirements. with 36-inch sinks and cabinets. So when we're talking about these bathrooms in these kitchens, do they need to be
Absolutely,
converted to ADA?
100%. That is such a good question, Jeremiah, and that they do have to be ADA compliant. And I even had state come in one time, and under our life safety code, and so we had the sinks, right, and then we took the cabinetry off underneath so that they could wheel themselves up, because I was so big into promoting independence. Right. So I wanted them to be able to pull up, and we can assist, but I wanted them to do as much as they could. But I kind of got dinged because they didn't like the pipes exposed, because they didn't want their little knees against the pipes.
Gotcha.
And so those are the type of things you have to very much take in consideration. Like, that had to be covered. So I actually had to get a guy to create some boxes, to put under there. But we designed it to where they were at a slant, to where the wheelchair could still get there for independence, but yet it protected their little knees. So ADA compliance, but those things you've got to think about.
Okay, is that in the kitchen and in the restrooms? Or
not in the kitchen, because they're not allowed in the kitchen.
Okay, so very good. That's
not allowed in the kitchen, and also the staff bathroom. But because you're going to have outside public there, I make sure that my staffing bathrooms are ADA compliant. Because your staff may not have the need, but you have to have the public, and the public will have access to that bathroom. So even your staffing really needs to be ADA compliant. You'll have people kind of fight with me on that a little bit, but I'm right.
I'm gonna go with her.
Why fight it when state comes in? Why fight it, right?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Last thing you want to do is get into an argument with a state regulator, because you're pretty well guaranteed to lose that one.
You want everything right, and you want them in and out.
Yeah, it's I don't know. That could be a whole other topic for a whole other show. But
100%. Yeah, if you have people buying the homes and they're like, then we can have one on state regs. Yes.
So, and I'm sitting here thinking, we were talking about the Jack and Jills and then making those ADA, because a lot of times with the Jack and Jills, there's limited space in those little hallways that are leading up, and of course, we're going to have a 36-inch door.
It's huge expense. A lot of times.
Sometimes they just won't fit. So it's exactly something you need to take into consideration when you start looking at these houses that you're evaluating, and really need to think through, instead of just saying, well, it's got this room, this room, this room, this would be great for that.
Exactly.
When you start looking at the dimensions and the requirements to go into making those bathrooms ADA, sometimes the space just doesn't fit. It doesn't work. Absolutely. So,
and when we're talking about Alzheimer's and dementia, which, like I said, frankly, that's who pays the most.
Right.
We have to be very honest about that. That's who's going to pay the most. But they're going back in time. And so you may get them when they're still walking and talking, but then eventually they get to where they can't walk, like toddlers. So they will be in the wheelchair. They will be in a wheelchair at some point. So if you have the showers that have like the lips, they'll never work. So it may be the right dimension, but it's so difficult to transfer them onto a transfer bench with those lips. So like where I work, just like home, and we went in and had all those removed to where you could easily just pull the wheelchair and then slide them over onto a shower bench very easily. So it's just, those are the type of things you just have to really, really consider. And I have people ask me all the time, when you're looking financially at how long you expect mom and dad to be there. The median average stay, which this is the official answer, is 22 months. That's the official answer.
Wow.
But I have a lady that was in assisted living for 16 years. I've had them be there 4, 5, and 6 years. And so I tell people financially to plan on 36 months. I'm more comfortable, and I think as an investor, I think that the 36 month is really, to me, a more practical number of how long they would be there.
Right. And so what about lifting apparatus for showers and...
Well, here's, once again, you may have some nurses out there, because I do not want I want my assisted living to be like their home.
Right.
And we cook homemade food. Every single day we have biscuits and homemade biscuits and gravy, hash browns, bacon, sausage. I know. I mean, this is every day. We want it like home. We make their beds every day. We take their trash out every day. We want it like home. They bring all their most precious stuff into that room. So when you start putting Hoyer lifts in there, to me, You turn it into a nursing home. You turn it into a skilled. I do not allow them. But it's not that's not a state reg.
Right, right. It's just
that's a Lori Janacek rule.
Lori Janacek rule. So Shayla's saying that you know, kind of like what you were talking about, that the elderly become more childlike as time goes on, and cleanliness becomes an issue. It
does. I mean, Shayla, that's a very good point, because they go back in time.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, as they go back in time, I mean, you know, I had a lady the other day that wanted to see the popcorn in my hair, and she just threw the popcorn at me and just laughed about it, you know, just cracked up, you know. But also your men.
Right.
If they were raised, you know, on a farm or ranch, you know, I hate to be so blunt about this, but, you know, they pissed outside. They just did. And so as they go back in time, what do you think they're going to do?
They want to know where that tree is.
100%. And what do you think they think? They see a lamp. They see a closet, you know, at the corner of the living room. And so, so there's a lot of products for that. But once again, Shayla, it's such a good question. It's, man, you got to have those floors right, and, you know, the cleaning, and it's extremely important.
You're probably not going to catch it all. It's impossible to watch.
You're not going to be able to catch
everybody
it all.
24/7.
You're not going to be able to catch it all. You're not going to be able to catch it all. I had a lady one time that her husband was very aggressive, and she just simply couldn't handle it home anymore. And brought him to our assisted living, and she was, you know, so incredibly proud of herself. She had everything, and he had fabulous furniture, and, you know, just, you know, boots and just everything. And then she walked in, and she said, "Oh, and here's a kitty litter box." And I was like, "Honey, I'm sorry, but we can't have cats here." "Oh, no, it's for him. I trained him to use a kitty litter box." And she was so proud of herself. Like, she was incredibly proud. And my staff was like, "Cool," you know, and I was like, no. And I didn't want to insult her, but I was like, okay, we'll talk about this in a minute, you know.
We'll get around that one.
Yeah, she was so happy. She had trained him.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
But it's an issue, not a pretty subject, but, you know, as an investor, you got to talk about it.
It's reality. It just is. I mean, you know, my mother, best I could tell, she lived somewhere between the 50s and early 60s in her mind the last several years, and she had absolutely no idea who I was, because in her mind I was either not born or I was a little bitty kid. And so when she looked up at me, and then I'd say who I was, and she's like, she told me one time, "Can't be."
Yeah,
I mean, it's just her response. Can't be.
Exactly. Oh, exactly. You know, I deal with caregivers all the time, and one of the things that's the most hard on them is when the husbands start calling them mother, or start calling them their mother's name, and they could never stand their mother-in-law. Like, that is like, not only are they forgetting me, but they're referring to me as Hazel, and that's his mother, and I could never stand her. I always, you know, you got to find some humor in some of this, you know.
So here's a good question. She's asking about, what about someone on dialysis?
I had one man on dialysis. Because we never had to mess with it at all. We didn't have to deal with it at all. And we actually arranged for an ambulance to pick him up once a week, or 3 times a week, I'm sorry, and take him to dialysis. But, you know, I guess Medicare, their insurance did pay for that. And so it actually worked out just fine, you know.
And I was thinking, in my mind, I was thinking that's just a transportation issue, because obviously we're not going to put a dialysis machine in the facility.
No, exactly. No, I had one.
Nor is there going to be one in any of the other facilities. Those folks are going to have to transfer or, you know, transport over to wherever they need to go.
Yeah. Well, at that time, Medicare paid for it. Like I said, I know there's a lot of changes, but it worked out just fine. He was with us for a long time, actually. Yeah.
So Jeremiah says it costs about 20 grand to put an elevator in a house.
Holy cow, that's a lot of money.
It is, but, you know, when you're talking about,
if you're charging $5,000 a month, you know, and you're saying I can put 3 more people up there.
Feet.
Yeah, but like I said, you know, I would definitely, we have to think about fire issue. You know, we would have to go to the life safety code. I would get a life safety code expert, you know, because, you know, in the state of Texas, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, but I think I am right, but there has never been a fire as long as in the state of Texas, or someone perish in the state of Texas, as long as there was a properly working sprinkler system. But even if that's properly working, but that elevator's not, and they can't get down, you know, so it's the fire issue on that I would really get some really good advice on.
So if you had someone that was you set it up for type B, but you have type A residents
all day
that
long
are upstairs, and they could actually walk the stairs down in an emergency.
I have never had a resident that could walk stairs.
Yeah.
Properly.
Well, I can't walk them properly.
Properly, you know, yeah.
My days of two-story houses are long gone.
Yeah. See, I'm the same.
No desire.
Yeah.
So and this is another great one that Joshua is asking, talking about state regulations versus city or capacity, city capacity regulations.
That's actually a very good question. As long as you're sticking to what the state says you can have per room, per square footage that we just talked about,
right,
and the windows and blah, blah, blah. I've never, ever had anybody come back and say that, for example, oh no, you can't put you can't turn this into a residential care home. Now, I'm not saying that's not possible, but as long as you're sticking to the state regs, I've never had anybody, I don't know the state could stand on it that the city could stand on it, by the way. I just don't think they could, as long as you're sticking to what, that you're operating within those state regs in that home.
Yeah, in my vast experience, which is zero, it's my understanding, but I'm not an attorney. I've never really looked at regulations, is that the city can't really stop you from doing that. I've heard that, but I don't know if it's true or not. Yeah. If anybody has any experience with that, whether or not the city can actually block you from having one of these facilities in a neighborhood, which as long as you're sticking to the life safety code and all that. Right. Right. Yeah. I believe that they cannot. Is my thinking. It's not really any different than a facility for the mentally challenged as well. Sure. Or whatever the PC term is for that these days.
And usually, the neighborhoods love it because whoever owns that assisted living, they keep it up looking beautiful. Right. I mean, they always keep it gorgeous, and they want the upkeep of it. So most people don't mind it at all.
Because curb appeal becomes pretty important.
Absolutely.
But one thing to think about too is the entrance and getting into the facility as well. So properties that are up on a hill with lots of steps leading up, or a driveway that slopes down, or it really steps going down. It needs to be pretty flat land.
That's a very good thought.
When you get off at the street, you can just walk right up the steps, and maybe just one step up into the porch and into the house.
That's a very good thought. And I think for investors to know, right now, I think the numbers are saying that we have like 30,000 people in assisted livings and residential care homes. I mean, that'd be large type, small type, residential, but we are expecting those numbers to grow. Right. And I want to, just because I'm blonde and I'm thinking about this, I just want to make sure I get this out. This is not a political statement, so please, don't yell at Russ. I don't care what side of the spectrum you are with Trump. But the fact is, since Trump started kind of rolling heads at the VA now, we've got some great, with the aid and attendance opportunities out there. And they can pay up to $1,850 a month towards for them to be in assisted living, whether it's small or large or residential or whatever. And so if they get, their Medicare benefits, whatever, it's like, let's say $1,200, then they get, their Social Security, then you add $1,850 that from your VA benefits, that puts them in your facility, that puts them in there. So make sure that when you're really thinking about that, and the requirements are that either the veteran or their spouse had to serve at some point, even if it's 2 days, but at some point during wartime years. And so it's a wonderful, wonderful benefit. And when I first started hearing about this, it took a year for them to get it. And I just helped a veteran the other day, and it took him 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how do they go about that?
It's so easy. Every county has a local VA rep. Every county in Texas has a VA rep.
Where the one in Denton is.
Yes, and I work with Jimmy Petty in Grayson County, actually. And they are wonderful. And I think there's like a certain kind of paper you have, but basically now with computers, they bring up their Social Security number, and he can say if they qualify or not. You know,
it doesn't take long.
And it doesn't take long, but you have to already be committed to be in that assisted living. So you can't say, well, I'm going to go and apply for this, and then once I get it, I'm going to do it. Like, you have to say, I'm going to be.
But it's retro paid back.
It does. It all pays from the day you were admitted. So if you're going to go into Russ Keith's home or Joshua's assisted living, but you have to be committed to that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'm say make sure I'm explaining that right. But it is a wonderful benefit, and I have people ask me all the time, well, mom divorced a guy, but if nobody ever used that benefit, mom still qualifies.
Right. Because it'll transfer. So Melissa has a great question. It says, talking about writing policy procedures for your facility, right? So is there a place that they can go and source this, or
there is.
Do they need to write their own, or how did you do it?
Well, the number one thing is, the first thing you've got to do is whoever's going to be the head of your facility has got to go to a class. It's a 3-day class.
Okay.
And you can give them my email address, and anybody is welcome to email me, and I'll give you all that information. But you're going to have to go to this class, and you have to become basically an executive director, or assisted living manager. You've got to go get that degree, or that little 3-day certificate, and that is state required. And when you go to that, you're going to learn so much, and they're going to tell you, hey, if you want to buy policy procedures, got some for $500. You can also go online. There's different places online. So I took my existing ones, but then I went in and tweaked them.
Right.
And most of your nurses are going to do that for you. They're going to come in you may have just a plain oxygen policy, but an RN's going to go in and say, yeah, well, we're going to do this. And, it may have a standard restraint policy. And like me, I went in and said, no, we have a no restraint policy. So I went in and amended it. So great question. So whenever you go to that class, they're always going to tell you, hey, we're selling them for this. But then you can go in and tweak it. Right.
So another great question. What about elderly that still drive? How do you handle that?
Well, that's a big issue with me. It's like I said, driving is a huge issue. And the fact is, doctors write prescriptions for Aricept and Namenda every single day and give them the diagnosis of Alzheimer's, and rarely do they take their keys away. Rarely do they take their keys away. Something bad has to happen. And once again, if we don't find them within 24 hours, the results are catastrophic. So with me, I have one man that has a car, and basically, if he wants to drive, I go with him. That's just what I do. But that is a big issue when they are admitted to my facility, because there's sometimes that they want the car just for their own well-being. You know what I mean? Their sense of well-being, and that we're not ripping away their independence. But like in this case, I just go with him. He wants to go someplace, we go.
But that's a great question, Shayla. Great question. It is a great question, and it's a real problem.
It's a huge problem.
My father, he was hell-bent on driving, and if he turned the wrong way or looked down or looked back up, he was lost.
Yeah.
Because he got lost all the time, and so there was a couple of times I had to alert the local police. I said, look out for this car, and when you see it, just
absolutely, and
pull him over and point him in the right direction.
And I have to say this very quick while we're on this subject. If we need to issue a silver alert, and that Dad's in the car, we have to have the make and model of the car, and we have to have the tag number.
Yeah.
And I know my driver's license number, I know my social security number, but if you gave me $1 million, I could not tell you the tag number of my car, and most women can't. So we need to be teaching these families. If you even have a car, I don't care if Henry hasn't driven in 3 years, take a picture of the car and make sure the tag's in it.
Yeah.
Because if we need to issue a silver alert and we know he took off driving, we've got to have that information. And without it, like I said, if we don't find him in 24 hours, the results are catastrophic.
Yeah. Very good. Well, we're up against the last break, so we're going to step away real quick. And you guys, great job with the questions today. We really do appreciate it. But if you've got more questions, drop them in the comments. We'll come back after the show if we don't get to them, and we'll do our best to answer every single one of them. So thanks for watching. We'll be right back after these messages. And we're back. We got Lori with us today talking about Alzheimer's and in her book. Tell us where you can get the book. Where can I get the book?
You can get it on Amazon. There's a lot of Alzheimer's books out there. So the easiest way is just go on Amazon and enter my name, Lori Janacek, and it pops right up. There's a whole section in there about dealing with driving. Right. And how to prepare for it. And another thing that's in there is there's some really cool products out there now, some really cool products. Like, for example, if you're a little old man and you're trying to deal with your wife and the preacher's coming and she refuses to get in the shower, dry shampoo can be your best friend. You know, there's some cool jumpsuits that it looks like dad has a really great polo shirt and a beautiful pair of slacks, but it's actually all sewn together and there's a zipper in the back, and that is a great deterrent for incontinence. And so I have all these great cool items back there, and you just run your smartphone over those QR codes and it takes you directly to those sites.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so that's
very
kind
cool.
of a cool feature. And there's also a car decal, and it doesn't say I have Alzheimer's. That's not what it says. It just actually has the forget-me-not flower, to where if somebody is in a white F450, F150, and we need to find it in a hurry, and you know, we're in Grayson County and everybody's in a white Ford, it's just a quicker way for us to find that vehicle. So
right.
we can tell law enforcement, hey, look, there's a forget-me-not sticker on the back. Here's the tag number. Here's a current picture of dad, because with this disease, we stopped taking pictures. We just do.
Right.
We just do. So we need a current picture. It can't be one of dad next to a 1977 Chevelle with a wife beater and a cigarette out of his mouth, because you know that's not what he looks like anymore.
We need something what he looks like today.
Yes, and this is what the book does. It kind of guides you through all that. Like, this is what you need to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
So how do we get in touch with you?
Well, anybody can email me. It's janacek@yahoo.com. So LORIJANACEK@yahoo.com. And, you know, everybody have my number. I mean, you know, I'm very accessible. I have been on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for over 10 years, working in assisted living. It's a passion of mine. And, you know, it's a bigger passion to help people. And I think that converting these homes into residential care homes for our babies and our loved ones, it is the wave of the future, and I very much believe in it. I believe it. I think it'd be a great investment. Just need to make sure some of those questions are answered.
The demand is going up.
Oh, big time.
So
big
lots
time.
of opportunity there, and
big time.
And you know, in our experience, my wife, I mean, one of her passions is really to deal with the aging, and she. Because some of the facilities, the rehab facilities that her grandmother was in, were not what you would call nice.
Sure.
They weren't bad.
Right.
I mean,
right.
they weren't, you know, just this super scuzzy place. They just, you walked in and it smelled. I mean, you didn't get 3 feet down the hall from the main entrance,
right,
and you could smell it. It didn't smell so bad when you first walked in, but as soon as you got through that double door that was always closed, there you go. You can smell it.
Absolutely.
And of course, the cattle call dinners, and it was just, I don't know, it wasn't a great situation, but
and that's why families are looking for these type of homes.
They're looking for these type of homes.
Absolutely.
They're small knit. You know, you get great staff, people that really care.
Yes.
And that's the key, is when you're looking for employees to come in and run these facilities. You just want someone that's got a heart as big as Texas, that has a compassion for the aging, because frankly they're challenging. They can be very, very challenging.
Yes, it is. And like I said, once again, if they require transfer, post-stroke, things like that, they can still be in an assisted living. And I think it's very important to make sure that we understand that. And also very quickly, I talked to a friend of yours, Joshua, and it doesn't have to be in town. My assisted living is on 13 acres in Whitesboro, Texas.
Right.
And I've got families all the time that this is how Dad was raised.
Right.
And so he loves it here, so you don't have to just do residential. And I think that's something, just make sure you're kind of keeping that in mind when you're looking.
So, yeah, because a lot of times some of the families would love to be able to keep their parents or their loved ones in the neighborhood in which they lived.
100%.
So,
100%. Yes.
You can put these facilities anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I wondered, like when I went to work there, how hard it was going to be to market. Because I'm from Sherman, and I thought, how, is it going to be difficult to get these families out there? But it was the exact opposite. I stay full with a waiting list because people want mom and dad to be there. We have guinea and wild turkeys and horses and cows, and they love it. They love it. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking for these properties. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a residential area. So
1980s or newer, and
We don't care about popcorn ceilings.
Yeah, we don't worry about popcorn for you. Don't waste your money scraping ceilings.
That's right.
But the layout of the house is more important than anything else. So location, layout of the house, and
bedroom to bathroom ratio.
Bedroom to bathroom ratio, and of course the ability to make the restrooms, bathrooms ADA. Those are the key things you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So you get good at looking for those types of facilities. So how often does someone come up to you and say, "Hey, I'm really be interested in buying one of these facilities"?
Here lately, it's been a lot. I mean, seriously, here lately, it's been a whole lot. And then, like, I went to the state class to get, because I'm already an executive director, but I was getting updated, and I was floored because I don't know, the class probably had 50 people in it, and Janoyce Wilson's teaching these classes all the time, and I would say 90% were building small ones, were there to build small ones, or they were there to buy the residential homes and they needed their licensure. Yeah, I was really surprised. And I mean, that was the talk of the class, is taking these residential homes and turning them, for residential care homes.
Yeah, and I haven't run numbers on that, but when you start talking about these facilities and what you can afford to pay for these properties, and you plan in what it's going to cost to get them ready to open, put in the sprinkler system, and make the bathrooms ADA, and you have to go in and literally widen all the doors, because we're going to have small doors. They're going to have to be opened up. They're all going to be 36-inch doors. So
but if you have 8 people in there, and just to keep it simple stupid for this area, just to keep it simple stupid, if they're straight assisted living, in other words, they can get in the shower by themselves, they're still ambulating with a walker, things like that, you're looking in the 3s and the 3,000s. If they're Alzheimer's and dementia, you're looking at 45 to 5 to 52. I would say 47 to 52, frankly.
47 to 52.
And I would say very comfortably, you could put 8 in a house, comfortably.
Right.
I mean, of course, depending on the house,
again, it's all about the house and what's sellable to the family.
So, so if you take that average, very easily, you can be between 30 and 40 a month. Right. Easy.
Which makes this really, really lucrative.
It does. It does. And it does. Yeah. And you can be blonde and figure that out.
Oh, very good. Well, I tell you, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. This has been so fun. This is the coolest thing.
Interesting conversation, to say the least.
Thank you. This has been fun.
I just see tremendous opportunity, and
I do too.
Really from all sorts of different ways. I mean, obviously opening one of these facilities, you provide a place for mom, a place for dad, and that's kind of cool. But even as an investor, and you're looking at a wholesale deal, when you find one of these that really fits the mold, if you build a list of people that are investing in these homes, and really understand, and I may have to go back and just really do some math and figure out what the logistics on that, and I may do a video on that, and because really I'm just interested now, so I've got to go back and do some more research and do some math, and I may do a training video on that, and really just talk about the math. And the keypad, but really just bring in all of the different.
Yeah, I mean, I think to do a cost on that, I think it'd be great. I mean, I think it'd be fantastic.
I may just do that. I just think that'd be I want to learn it, and two, I think it'd be fun to learn. So, guys, thanks for joining us on Russ Hour this Wednesday. We'll see you again next Wednesday. And again, Lori, thank you very much for coming out to join us.
It's been great. Y'all been great.
We'll see y'all later. Y'all have a great Wednesday.
Hey everybody, I'm Ryan with PROPELIO. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. Turn on those notifications and stick around for more. We have tons of content like this all over our channel. So if you want to learn more about real estate investing, stick around, watch PROPELIO TV, and we'll see you later.